Is Daf Yomi Nedarim Samach. This is actually the Daf Yomi for Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, Chanukah. So it's the three holy days combined. Chut HaMeshilash Lo Yinatek B'Meira. This is the Daf Yomi for Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and Chanukah. So this person says in the beginning of the 8th chapter, Komein, the person makes a vow. Konem Yayin Shani Toim. The person takes a vow and he says, I'm not going to taste any wine hayom today. He says, I'm taking a vow against tasting any wine today. Eino aser ela shetachashech. And he's only going to be prohibited to drink wine until the day ends. And when does the day end? The day ends at chashecha, at sunset. So when it becomes dark, he's going to until the end of the day, until it becomes dark. The ayat said until sunset, but the Nimuki Yosef says until Tzeisat Kochavim, till nightfall. But Bein Hashmashos, since at dusk, since it's a question whether it's nightfall or still daytime, it's going to be a biblical suffix, a suffix there, right? So therefore we have to be strict. And so that's what the Nimuki Yosef explains. So if a person says Shabbos, if a person takes a vow that he's not going to drink wine this entire week, also because Shabbos, he's going to be prohibited to drink wine the entire week. The Shabbos she'avra, and the Shabbos itself is going to be included in the previous week. So he's prohibited to drink wine for the entire rest of the week, including the Shabbos. Well, we're going to read the Rani, and the Rani will explain it. Let's say he stands there on a Wednesday. He takes a vow that I'm not going to drink wine the rest of the week. He's prohibited for the entire week. And Shabbos itself, the day is included in this previous week. The Kiyami Inchi Shabbos Zu, if a person says I'm not going to drink wine this whole week, his intent is for the days of the week that are coming up and also including Shabbos. Let's say the next case of the Mishnah, let's say the person says Chodesh Zeh. Let's say the person says this month. Then Asr B'Koach Chodesh, and he's going to be prohibited to drink wine the entire month. The Rosh Chodesh Laba, and the day of Rosh Chodesh itself is going to be included in the next month. So therefore, he's going to be able to drink the wine. So and the Ran explains She'ein Rosh Chodesh because the Rosh Chodesh, which is really started the next month, that's after the days of the Chodesh, it's not included in the prohibition, but rather it is part of the next month. It's included in the next month. We see from here, Shabbos is the last day of the week. The Shabbos is the last day of the week, and Rosh Chodesh is the first day of the month. So the reason why Shabbos is the last day of the week is because we're leading up to it. The whole week is about preparing for Shabbos. That's the concept there. Shana Zu, if a person says, I'm not going to drink wine this whole year, Aser B'Koach Shana, he's going to be prohibited to drink wine the whole year. Rosh Hashanah Aser Lavo, and the day of Rosh Hashanah itself, that's part of the next year. That's part of the next year. Shavua Zeh, but if he changes his, if he says Shavua Zeh, which is a reference to the sabbatical year, for as long as this sabbatical cycle is coming up, then Aser B'Koach Shavua, he's prohibited to drink wine the entire sabbatical year, but Shvius Shavra, the sabbatical year itself, is going to be prohibited. There's a 7-year cycle. It's prohibited. Let's say he takes it in the 3rd year of the 7-year cycle. He's not allowed to drink wine that 3 years, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the sabbatical year itself, it's in this sense like Shabbos, that's included in the previous years, and he cannot drink wine. However, if he says Ve'im Amar Yom Echad, let's say he says, instead of saying Shani Toim Hayom, that I'm not going to drink wine today, but he says I'm not going to drink wine for one day, or for Shabbos Achas, or for 1 week, or for Chodesh Echad, or for 1 month, or for Shana Achas, or for 1 year, or Shavua Echad, or for 1 sabbatical cycle, then we're going to say Asr Miyom Yom. Then from when he takes the vow, he's going to be prohibited for this 24-hour period, meaning to say for 24 hours, or for 1 month, or for 1 year, literally, from the date of the making the vow till that time of the next year. So hold on one second. Okay. Okay. So there is a question. If let's say this year, does it mean the prohibition comes until the exact time where you stood on this year, like it does in this day? Like if you take a vow on Monday at 12 for Hayom, it means not for Yom Echad, it means till Tuesday at 12. But let's say you say 1 year, does it come to exactly that time 1 year later, or does it come to any time on that day 1 year later? So that's a machokas amongst the Rishonim. So the next part of the Mishnah, Ada Pesach, let's say you take a vow until Pesach, Asur Achi Yagia. Then it's prohibited to drink wine until Pesach starts. But let's say you say Achi Yahei Pesach, until it will be Pesach, Asur Achi Yetze, because then the implication is until Pesach will end. So then the prohibition comes until Pesach is over. Ad Lifnei Pesach, let's say until prior to Pesach, Ad Lifnei HaPesach. And here we have different version of different kirs. So some say Ad Pinei Pesach. Then Rameir Omer Asur Achi Yagia. The Rameir says that the prohibition is until Pesach arrives. Rabbi Yossi says Ad Sheyetze, until Pesach ends, because according to Rabbi Yossi, a person really intends to include also those days that are not explicit, and so therefore all the days of Pesach will be included in this vow. Whereas Rabbi Meir says that the intent was clearly to saying it prior to Pesach. Okay. Because it's possible when you say Lifnei Pesach, it's possible you could be saying until the start of Pesach, but it's also possible that you could be saying with Lifnei Pesach, meaning 1 second before it ends. So therefore, since all these things are possible, Meir says we go by the person wouldn't have wanted to put himself in doubt, and so therefore we're saying it assumes before Pesach starts. Whereas Rabbi Yossi is saying that it's prohibited until the moment that it ends. And so therefore a person would put himself into doubt. And so therefore, even those days are not explicitly intended to prohibit. So now the Gemara says, I'm not going to take a vow if we say Ayom, it's prohibited only until dark. So Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, but Rabbi Yirmiyah now adds a chumrah and a stringency. He says, even when it gets dark, you're still going to need to go to the Chacham to annul your vow, even after it gets dark. My time, and what's the reasoning? That after it gets dark, you need to go to the Chacham. Amar Rav Yosef, Gezerah Hayom Mishum Yom Echad. We're concerned that if we're going to allow you after it gets dark to start to drink the wine, then also in a case where you said 1 day, not just today, but 1 day, then you're also going to think that it's permitted after nightfall, and that would be a violation, a biblical violation. So therefore, in order to get yourself out of this doubt, we say go to the Chacham and annul the vow. So the Gemara says, so if that's the case, even if you make a vow of Yom Echad, which is 24 hours, we should still make you wait until nightfall of the next day. Why? Because we're concerned that maybe a person will not realize that Ayom, you have to wait till nightfall. In a case of Hayom, we're worried that you'll think, oh, you could start at any time that day, just like Yom Echad ends in the middle of the day. Also today, Hayom, anytime you do, we could say maybe Miktas Hayom Kikulo, I've done a portion of the day and now I'm completed the whole day. So the Gemara says that Rav Yosef's response is, we're concerned that a person might make the mistake if he takes a vow today that and he's allowed at nightfall, he might make the same mistake by Yom Echad and come to allow himself at nightfall. But Yom Echad by Yom will michas. But a person's not going to make the mistake if he says Yom Echad to think that it's going to be allowed at Yom Echad by Yom will michas. But he's not going to make the mistake to reverse. Meaning to say we're concerned that if he makes a mistake, that he's going to say that if he says the vow of Hayom, then and that's allowed, and that's allowed at nightfall, but he sees Yom Echad, so therefore he's going to allow himself, since that's allowed in the middle of the day, he might come to allow himself also in the middle of the day for Hayom. That is a mistake he would make. But if he makes a vow of Yom Echad of one day of 24 hours, he's not going to think it's permitted just at nightfall. That he wouldn't, that he will never make that mistake. Because when he says Yom Echad, it's only going to be permitted only after he stood there for 24 hours. And therefore, as a result of this, he's not going to be more lenient. So the Gemara now gives a different answer. Amar Avina, Amar Maremer, Hachi Amar Avuch Mishmei Rav Yosef, Kiman Azla Shmaita de Rabbi Abba. Like this teaching of Rabbi Abba, who says that you need to wait, that you need to go to a Chacham and have a She'ila, even if he said Hayom, even if he really technically speaking allowed at nightfall, we still say you have to go to the Chacham and ask for a question. That's Rabbi Nassan. That's really like Rabbi Nassan. The Rabbi Nassan taught that anybody who makes a vow, it's like, this was what you just said on yesterday's daf, if you make a vow, it's like you built an altar, and if you make an offering on that vow, it's like you brought an offering on that altar, meaning to say you've done something wrong. It's inappropriate to make an unsanctioned altar, and it's a sin to it's shlutei chutz. It's a terrible violation to make a sacrifice outside the temple. And so we see that from here that the essence of making the neder is actually a sin. So therefore, Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba is agreeing with this, and therefore he says that since you didn't make the vow properly, therefore we have another stringency, and we're going to say we have this other stringency, and we're going to say that you need to make a she'ela, you need to annul that vow, even though it's a really distant decree. Now, and so therefore we don't make this decree in all cases, but since there's any concern whatsoever, we make the decree. But what about the fact that we said this morning in Hallel, that it says, that David HaMelech said, I'll make a vow to Hashem. So we see from here that even though making a vow is not a good thing, there are certain circumstances where a person should make a vow. One of those circumstances is an Eis Tzara, a person's supposed to make a vow. And that's what David HaMelech was doing. In an Eis Tzara, he made that vow and then he paid it. So Shabbos Zu Aser B'Kol Shabbos Kuas. If a person makes a vow and says this Shabbos, he's prohibited to drink the wine the whole Shabbos. And even on Shabbos, because Shabbos is included in the previous days. Pshita, isn't that obvious? Of course, Shabbos is the conclusion of the week. Of course, it's included. So why would we need to say this? So the Gemara says, I might have thought that people have the custom to call the days of the week Yemei Shabbos. And so therefore, a person was only intending to prohibit the days of the week. Kamash one, no. A person also intended to have in mind to include the Shabbos itself. If a person says Chodesh Zu, if a person says this month, Asur B'Kol Chodesh, he's included in all the days of the month. The Rosh Chodesh, but the Rosh Chodesh is included in the next month, not that month. Rosh Chodesh is part of the next month. So why do we need to say that? Isn't this obvious? Pshita, it's obvious. So the Gemara is like, no, ki itzricha l'chodesh chaser. No, there are certain months which are malay and certain months there are chaser. In a month that is malay, then there are certain months that the chodesh is a month of 29 days, and so therefore the previous month, if the previous month was full, and so now if the previous month was a full month, then we're going to say there are 2 days of Rosh Chodesh. So if the previous month was 29 days, then day one is Rosh Chodesh of the next month. But if the previous month was 30 days, then day 30 is Rosh Chodesh, but it's the last day of the previous month, and day one is of the next month. It comes to the next month. So if the month was Chaser, if the month was only 29 days, Ma'alatema Rosh Chodesh, you might have thought, well, day 30 is really sometimes is from the previous month, even though right now it's from the next month. You might have thought Rosh Chodesh, Rosh Avrava, that since day 30, which is sometimes from the previous month, you might have thought that day 30 comes to the previous month, the low itzar. And therefore it shouldn't be prohibited, the low itzar. We should only prohibit all the days of the coming month. We see from here that people call that it's going to be prohibited because people call Reish Yarcha. People call this day 30 Rosh Chodesh, even though it's even though it's for the next month. And so therefore that's what we're saying, that when he says Rosh Chodesh, you follow Rosh Bnei Adam, and even though it's day 30 of the previous month, that we're going to say that it's from the next month. The Ran has a different girsa. The Ran's girsa is Pshita ki itzrecha chodesh chaser mal tema Rosh Chodesh v'sha'avar avi v'litzer k'mashman the karo inish reish yarcha. So it's a slightly different girsa. Next, the next line in the Mishnah states Shana zu aser b'kol hashana kula. So that if you say this year, you're going to prohibit upon yourself the remainder of that year, but not Rosh Hashanah. So the Gemara asks the question: Amar konim yayin shani toeim. So a person says, "I'm taking upon myself that I'm not going to eat any wine today." Konim yayin shani toeim yom. Why? If you just say the word yom, but you don't say hayom, or our Mishnah had spoken about where you had said the word hayom, or you had said the word yom echad. But let's say you just say yom. Is it kayom, or is it like yom echad? Is it kayom, that means until nightfall, or is it like yom echad, where it's 24 hours? So Tasha, let's learn that from our Mishnah. What does our Mishnah say? If you say hayom, then it's prohibited till dark. Doesn't that imply hayom ki yom echad? That if you just say yom, it's like 24 hours. Well, the Gemara says no, but what about the opposite? If you say one day, that's 24 hours. That's from yom yom, that's 24 hours. But doesn't that imply hayom, that if you say yom, i.e. without yom echad, kayom dami. So it wouldn't imply that that's just till nightfall. From that you can't prove it. So the Gemara on Sunday's daf, which is also Rosh Chodesh, is going to try and prove the answer to this question. But we'll stop here now. Everybody should have a good Shabbos, a Chanukah Sameach, and a Chodesh Tov.